Good morning. I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to Space is Wide and Good Friends Are Too Few, Episode 3, Jump Point Theory. Dr. Tamala Perks was ecstatic. She had finally gotten what everyone in the scientific community was jockeying for. A research proposal to be accepted by the Earth Federation as worthy of dedicating their 5 labs to. Theoretically, they could give one lab each to 5 teams led by 5 different people, but it had been apparently decided a while ago that it would be overall more efficient if it were an all or none affair. Every 6 months to year, or longer in some cases, and there would be a new project finished, and anyone even slightly interested in the applications of Trans-Newtonian physics, which was everyone who was anyone, would get a copy of the paper and eagerly pore over it as another piece of the newest puzzle was set down. Some were more helpful than others, of course. Dr. Zapata's work on cryogenics didn't do much to push the understanding of TNP very far. But Dr. Perks found an interesting anomaly in readings from Dr. Skoma's work on TNP-based lasers. It wasn't something Dr. Skoma was looking for, and it was only noted in order to be absolutely complete. Dr. Perks believed she could use uridium to power a graviton sonar system. It would work exactly like sonar does in the water, but this would use gravitons in space rather than sound moving wave molecules and having the sound bounce back. The best part of the entire system was there were already some electromagnetic detectors that could be used as the ear for the sonar due to how uridium interacted with gravitons. Although her system would be filed as active sensors, she would be sure to point out in the paper that existing EM detection units and thermal detection units could easily be used as passive sensors. As far as anyone knew, all ships would leak heat and electromagnetic energy as a byproduct of just existing and keeping livable conditions inside the ship. Dr. Cameron Bosk sat down the acceptance letter with a smile. She was the next in line for a project funded by the Earth Federation. She was undoubtedly standing on the shoulders of giants, but then again, everyone was at the moment, and the giants were standing on each other's shoulders. The analogy kind of broke down the more you applied it to the present situation. As everyone scrambled for understanding and even the smallest scrap of funding and or knowledge, Dr. Bosk was able to find both. Due to her expertise in optics, she had been one of those chosen to peer review Dr. Skoma's last project on lasers. Due to that, she was put on a short list for peer review of Earth Federation funded projects. And due to that, she had peer reviewed Dr. Perks' last paper. And that early copy led to now. She had found an interesting thing in Dr. Perks' paper. Her sonar array seemed to work wonderfully, as tests on Earth seemed to indicate. We'd only know more when it was placed on ships, or a receiver/emitter was placed somewhere off of Earth. However, the interesting thing was some of the gravitons that made up the background noise in the study were odd when viewed using Trans-Newtonian elements. The gravitons from the solar system were all very similar to each other. You might term them as siblings. But some of the gravitons picked up by Dr. Perks seemed to not be a sibling of the normal soul-based gravitons, more like cousins. Dr. Bosk had an idea that maybe, possibly, these gravitons weren't from Sol, but some other nearby solar system. And there was some shortcut between here and there, because they didn't show the age one would expect from traveling all that distance. Daryl Rafter finished the last line of the papers he had been given and set them down. He looked across his desk at the man sitting opposite him. Jamshid Sheh was his Minister of Industry and had prepared this briefing for him. Okay, Jamshid, what does this mean? Jamshid shifted in his seat and cleared his throat. Well, Mr. President, it means that we have finally finished converting all of our pre-Trans-Newtonian factories over to either mines or fuel refineries or TN construction facilities or facilities to create missiles or facilities that could theoretically create small ships similar to what we deem fighter craft. Ships that are less than half the size of the Victory class or the Shuttle class ships. Daryl nodded. Okay. Please continue. Well, sir, it means we can start expanding what we have now. The Earth Federation is 17 years old now, and our population has grown by over 20%. I would suggest we begin by building 100 more construction facilities. But don't we have a long-term shortage of raw thorium for our fuel refineries? We do, but to create enough mines to offset that shortage, it'd take a few years. However, if we build construction facilities, we can shorten the time to close to what it would be if we started now, as well as having our potential for growth permanently increased. Also, our store of thorium is so huge that this shortage really isn't an issue to worry about. This shortage has been going on for years, and our reserves keep growing because of how tiny our usage is. No, that is unacceptable, Daryl countered. We are about to start greatly expanding the Earth Federation Space Navy. We cannot, and I will not let this thorium shortage go on for much longer. You are dismissed. He watched as Jamshid got up, collected several papers he had set on the edge of the desk nearest to him, and quietly left the room. Commodore Timmy Lapp sat in his office as the head of the Earth Federation Space Navy. Commodore Sid Sylvia had quietly retired some while before. Looking down at his tablet, he checked the time on his next meeting. Commander Monty Weaving should be in his office any minute now. Some big update about the Victory and its mission to scan the outer planets and their moons. Just as he was putting his tablet back on his desk, Monty strode in. He ran an extremely tight ship over there in survey, something Timmy disagreed with, but he really couldn't disagree with the results. Ah, Commander Weaving, I've been expecting you, Timmy said with a warm smile as Monty crossed the room. Thank you, sir, he replied with a salute before taking the seat Timmy gestured towards. You have some news for me that just couldn't wait? Timmy said by way of prompting his subordinate. Yes, sir. I've received reports from the Victory about Saturn just last night and had to come here as soon as I could this morning. In the upper atmosphere of Saturn, there are almost 4 times as much thorium as Earth has, and it's fairly close to the top of the atmosphere. So, if we can figure out a way to mine Saturn's upper atmosphere, we would have a large, easy-to-mine source of sorium right there just for the taking. Timmy nodded thoughtfully at this. Okay. What does the rest of that system look like? Well, Monty began. Timmy instantly didn't like that tone. The Victory isn't done with all of the moons. There are still 9 left unscanned for now. There are only 2 moons where any Trans-Newtonian elements have been found. One is Pandora, which has almost laughably small amounts of iridium. It's estimated at 49 tons. And 20,000 tons of duranium. But Titan has mercasium, vendorite, and sorium all in the millions of tons. But they are all fairly hard to mine, especially the sorium. You are dismissed, Timmy ordered to Monty and watched as he left. That was some good news, but also bad news. Long gone were the days of Lieutenant Commander DeFry's early messages to Commodore Sylvia, in which every body he'd surveyed had Trans-Newtonian elements. Jupiter had some sorium. Ganymede had a lot of tritanium, but it was hard to mine. There were a couple of asteroids in the inner belt that had some small traces of elements on them. Earth seemed to be unique in having all elements present and in huge quantities. Venus and Mercury were going to be the main targets for early colonization for mining, though. Between the two of them, they had almost all of the elements in much larger quantities than Earth did, but only had some on each planet. The moon had some significant deposits as well, and would, for many reasons, be a logical first choice for colonization. So that would happen. And then Mars would likely be up there in one of the first waves. Not because it held any Trans-Newtonian elements, it didn't, but it had been a dream of people for so long. Dr. Cameron Bosk finally finished it. After several years of work, she had cracked the final equations. She was right when she had first noticed the anomalies. There were spots around a star, and the placement depends on the mass of the star, which further bolstered her idea that it had something to do with gravity and gravitons, where gravitational tunnels could exist. These tunnels would, theoretically of course, connect the star to a nearby star. They wouldn't move in relation to the solar system they were in, and would keep those two systems connected somehow. The problem was that Cameron wasn't very skilled in detection. She would have to leave that up to Dr. Perks. It took Tamala Perks almost 2 years before she finally cracked it. She had created a sensor that was originally based off the geological sensors that had been in use on both of the Victory class and the Shuttle B class ships. But these sensors that she had created would go to each potential gravitational tunnel spot in a system and should be able to find if there are any of these tunnels there. The design was being sent off to the EFSN engineers so they could devise a new class of ship to discover if Sol had any of these tunnels, the openings of which were starting to be referred to among the various scientists who worked at these labs as jump points. But before she could even rest, she had to get back at it with Cameron Bosk. Once she was finished, they had been immediately assigned to try and figure out how a ship could use these points. The Canberra would be finished in late 2141, just 9 months after the first gravitational survey sensor had been tested by Perks and her team. It would be almost identical to the Victory class ship. However, this new class of ship would be primarily for searching out these jump points. Thank you so much for listening to the third episode of Space is Wide and Good Friends Are Too Few. Make sure you tune in on Saturday, March 24th for the next episode of this series. Thank you.